When we closed fairly suddenly, it seems a long time ago, we had an artist called Pavel Isupov. His show was up for exactly one day and then it closed, so all that work was for naught. Then we had a whole programme for the year lined up, and of course all those shows had to be cancelled. We've programmed next year, so we hope that all those artists whose shows have been cancelled will be here next year. And this show is in some ways a taster. It has some of Pavel's work, some of Mahali O'Hare, some of Bill Stewart, all of whom had their shows cancelled. But at the same time, there's a little nod towards the past. These are some of these artists we've had particular relationships with. Indeed, many of them you've made films about, so it's a chance for us to hopefully get some of those films out there again and to let the public have a go. And it's a selling show as well, where at the moment we're very conscious of the need to make ends meet. But of course, ironically, given that so many of the artists had their shows postponed, it was due to open on November the 5th, and lo and behold, it's not going to be open. November the 5th was the date in which it was the grand opening. We had banners had been ordered. At the local primary school, the children were doing posters to celebrate the fact that we were opening on November the 5th. So the fact that that date is the one that was selected of all the dates to begin lockdown was a pretty grim irony from our point of view. So the fact that we've been given this December the 3rd date to open is, we have to be a little bit cautious about that. Who knows what will happen? We've made huge efforts to get the place open. It's had deep clean. We've taken on new staff. We've had all sorts of publicity for a whole programme had been put together for November, and that of course has just had to be junked. So we are at the moment scrabbling around, and this film is now the kind of virtual show of the real show. It seems such a shame to actually have it all up and there to be no one to see it. What we hope is that this show will continue into December, and the craft fair, which we normally have here, that'll go down into the auditorium in the foyer. But these days you make plans as best you can, and you just have to wait and see how the dice roll. It's a new thing for us, this idea of a virtual show. I know it's becoming a very common thing elsewhere. I think it's good that it's actually up for some reason. I think it's almost a kind of statement in itself that we've put it up on the walls and we've tried to make it look well as a show, and hopefully people can get something from seeing it on the film. The way we're going to do it is that there'll be other information available on all the artists. We'll give you their websites, we'll give you the links to the films we've made about them, we'll give you a price list. If you wish to purchase a work, you simply contact us and we can either get it to you or you can come and collect it. There is a tremendous variety of stuff here. We've got Bill Stewart, who's had a film made about him, which details his very interesting past as regards his hitchhiking around America, his time at Goldsmiths. And we've got Truda Lane, who I hope she won't mind me saying, was 90 this year, and her son Jacob, who was due to show downstairs last year, but again has had to have his show postponed. Paul Seed, who's a photographer who worked with us over lockdown on a photographic project. He took photographs of Torrington in lockdown, and there are a couple of those that are featured amongst the selection we've got. We have some local potters who had a trip to Japan again before lockdown. And these are just fresh out of the kiln a couple of days ago. We've got Merlyn Chesterman, some of her prints of Hartland Quay. She's a great swimmer, and her work reflects that. If you see the waves that she draws, they're the waves that she swims in. We've got Lookman Johnson, whose work combines text, so perhaps she's not a great one for filming because you'd really need to spend a bit of time with her work to get all the text. I've included a couple of my pictures, which are painted over lockdown. Hopefully they give some feeling of fresh air out on the cliffs, bare rock at Hartland Quay. And one of them shows a solitary boatman heading out to sea, which is a bit how many of us, I think, feel about lockdown, somewhat isolated, heading towards ever stormier waters. We've got Petra Freeman, who was brought up round here, as was Mahali O'Hare, whose show is coming up next year as well. Both had childhoods connected with Bude, so they're an interesting pair to compare and contrast. And then Pavel, who I've mentioned before, who is he's Devonian, but he's got Russian heritage and studied in Edinburgh and is currently working in London. And his show was great, and it was a real shame that we only had a day of it, so we'll have a longer session next year. But these three paintings are a kind of taster of that. It's all very rich. There's a lot of different things happening at the moment. So Laura Porter, who did a project with us about the Huguenots a little while back, she's got these rather interesting light switches. I know she's involved in setting up a new gallery in Braunton. There are various things that are happening around the place that, little shoots of hope, shall we say. Well, we're downstairs in our cafe gallery, which normally would be full of people both looking at the pictures, I hope, and enjoying a cup of coffee or a snack or a meal. We were hoping that this would provide a welcome when people walked through the doors on November the 5th. But it wasn't to be, but we hope that they will still be up when people do return. We've got Timothy Tennant, who is a local artist, and people who live in Torrington will recognise these views on the top of Castle Hill or down by the river. These are paintings that he's been doing over lockdown. And these are next to Maya Stewart Wilson, who, although she lives in Heartland, has studied in Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea, and her work is very much based upon the brushstroke, that brushstroke that you make in an instant and can never be repeated. There's an interesting relationship between the two of these painters in the sense that Timothy Tennant is also very much influenced by Impressionism, trying to capture the moment, whereas Maya's moment is in the form of small birds that are created through just a few strokes of the brush. I like to think that even if people at the moment, anyway, if they just come in, even if they're delivering a parcel, they can see something on the wall to indicate that this is an art centre and that the work is continuing in some way. We're all very determined. The more blows that we have, the more stubborn we get, that we are going to keep going, and that by hook or by crook we're going to get things out there, and that things will be ready so that when we can open properly.